This video contains spoilers for the first 3 hours of the game. Hey, I hope you're doing fantastic. You look fucking gorgeous today. I don't know what you're doing, but it's really working. I was gonna make a Far Cry 5 review this week, as you guys know, but I realized that I may have forgotten to play Far Cry Primal and review that first, since that was released beforehand. So I have to kind of scratch all the progress I made and restart from the beginning and play Primal. So I apologize for that. So Primal review coming next week, hopefully. So instead, for today, I made you guys a Guardians of the Galaxy review. And when I sat down to write this review, it was going to be a quick review like normal. But I had a lot to say. And I set up a new system for reviewing, at least a longer system for a bigger reviews like this, because I would like to do more like this in the future. I will be ranking the game based on different foundational pillars of the game and its genre. I will then rate the game out of 10 in each category and use that to find my final review of the game. In the case of Guardians of the Galaxy, the pillars will be as follows: world building, plot, characters, graphics, music, gameplay, and bugginess. Oh no though, this video is a long boy. So sit back, crack a LaCroix, nab some munchies, and enjoy the video. Judging this game on world building is strange. At least I feel like it is. To the point I won't be rating this pillar towards the final rating of the game. Since this game exists within an already well-established universe, there isn't much freedom they get with creating their own things and expanding upon their own world. However, I will say they do a great job of setting the expectation of this is its own thing, which is incredibly important when making a game like this. At the near beginning of the game, it's mentioned in passing that Drax killed Thanos. This not only takes a well-known villain of the MCU and changes the entire plotline, but ties it directly with Drax's character, as he already canonically hates Thanos. This allows you, the player, to set that expectation of, this is different, allowing you to have an open mind on their take of the Guardians. So since the world building is a weird enigma section of this game, it is still fantastically done version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. But I hope you agree that I shouldn't really rank this pillar. So I'm now going to just move on to talk about the Now, in the hopes to make this review relatively spoiler-free, all spoilers I give in this section will be related to the first 3 hours of the game. If you want no spoilers whatsoever, you can skip to the timestamp in the description of the video, where the plot will no longer be relevant. Thank you. Alright, now that those losers are gone, let's move on. The plot in this game is one of its weaker points. Even though it's not all that bad, it's just relatively generic. I'd say that it's good that it's generic. It sits as a framework for the characters to live and breathe. And we will get more into the Guardians themselves later on in the video. I think what threw me for a loop in this game is how well it paces itself. It really knows how to pull back from the gameplay and let the characters lift this space epic into actual stardom. I think it's important to say that if you don't enjoy a narrative experience, then this game really isn't for you. A solid 50 to 60% of this game is mini cutscenes to pretty damn long cutscenes. If you look up a video on YouTube of all the cutscenes put together, it's 10 hours of content. That's not counting all the little cutscenes of dialogue you can completely miss if you don't explore. I would say that my favorite part of the beginning of the game was when Rocket and Star-Lord duel for who can kill the most of these creepy little worm monster thingies, and it really just kind of like showed their characters really well, and it was at the very beginning, and it was just fantastic. Altogether, while the overarching plot is relatively unimpressive, it leads to amazing visual spectacles, and all the dialogue is written fantastically. I'd give this pillar a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's really a framework for the real story, the Guardians of the Galaxy. Honestly, this perfectly segues into the The highlights, the showrunners, the big boy paparazzi killers themselves. The characters. The team that wrote these characters are fantastic at their jobs. I wasn't only booting up Guardians of the Galaxy to finish it for this review, I was booting it up to hang out with people I enjoyed being around. They were funny, enjoyable, grandly rude at times, but altogether great people to be around. They were growing, they were challenging each other to be better people, even if they didn't notice it. And I found it to be a wonderful, beautiful example of platonic love and healthy relationships. As someone that's had many unhealthy friend groups, it was nice to see a healthy one blossom, even if they were fictitious. I was trying to decide who the game was mostly about, but as I thought about it, it was really about a family. The Guardians of the Galaxy. A group of felons and miscreants finding a home within each other. It's a story that the Guardians of the Galaxy tell beautifully. The characters that resonated with me the most had to be Drax and shockingly Star-Lord. It was wonderful to watch them grow as people, and playing as Star-Lord and directly helping Drax grow as well as Star-Lord by picking how I responded to some things was a really good touch. It made it feel more personal, intimate even. I really cared about these characters in the end, and the game really didn't try to use the, ooh, one of them might die. You know they won't because, well, sequels. However, they do put in danger the people these characters care about, which hurts you. You hate to see them hurt and be scared. Cause I gotta mention that the voice acting and facial animation is absolutely fan-fucking-tastic, which makes them all the more real. As you learn Drax's backstory and more about what causes him pain, you really feel for him, and you feel genuine sadness, or at least I did. I also want to say that I felt the villain for this game was perfect for the situation. There are some great story beats and character moments that I don't want to spoil, including who the villain is. So I highly recommend playing this game if you really value good characters. Hell, if you loved the movies, I genuinely feel that this does the characters more justice. The character pillar hits that 10 out of 10 for sure. Alright, let me take a breather real quick before we get into the This game looks phenomenal. I was playing with a 1650 since that's all I've got at the moment, and it looked great. It ran pretty smoothly on medium, and set pieces still blew my mind. I can only imagine how fantastic this game looks at the highest settings. The art team behind this really allowed themselves to get wacky and creative and fucking genius. The locations you visit on this romp alone is worth the money spent on this game. Every place you visit is so different from the last, you find yourself itching to see what's next in store. I'm somebody who's really into game design and concept art and all that jazz, so this game was really inspiring. It's a wonderful example of how much a beautiful setting can boost a game's likability. And again, the faces in this game look and move ridiculously realistic. Clothing, the textures, the reflections, wonderful. I fucking loved it so much. This pillar is easily a 10 out of 10, which reminds me we need to talk about the This game has a really good soundtrack. They picked some fantastic songs in here, and even more beautifully, the Rickroll itself. Now for this pillar, I need to ask myself, does the licensed music count towards a game soundtrack? And I absolutely think it does. I wasn't sure since it wasn't music they made themselves, and then I realized utilizing this music effectively matters just as much. It doesn't matter if the music was made for the Guardians of the Galaxy, it works well for it. So rather than judging this section on how good the soundtrack is, because it is quite good, I'm judging it on how it's used in the game. They managed to make the music flow pretty well with the plot and combat. There's some generic combat-esque music that plays during encounters, but it helps get the blood pumping, so it does the job. Now this is a gameplay system, so I would normally save it for the gameplay pillar. This pillar needs me to mention it for me to continue. This feature is the huddle function. Almost like an ultimate, this ability charges up during combat. When you activate it, Peter Quill calls a huddle, pulling everybody from combat, whether they are low health or stunned or whatever. And he gives a speech based on how they are feeling about the fight. The cool part being that you can in fact fail this speech. Now, after you succeed in the speech, everyone has their abilities recharged, their health refilled, and sick-ass music starts playing. My first huddle failed because I wasn't sure what I was doing. I'm an idiot too, but that's besides the point. And after I failed it, the Rickroll played. I don't know know if that was intentional on the game's part, but it was fucking hilarious. I do have some issues with this segment though. It seems that some of the songs have been shortened during these huddle segments to only last as long as the boost does. The issue with this is it leads to some unceremonious ends to the song and jumps back into the generic blood pumping action movie trailer music. So all in all, utilization of the music was an 8 out of 10. Not a whole lot of creativity outside of the licensed tracks. Alrighty, second to last is... I personally really enjoyed the gameplay, the combat, and just the large segments of walking around and just soaking everything in. Again, this is a narrative-focused work of art. It has its incredibly exciting and interesting segments, but there are moments where it's 20 minutes of cutscenes sandwiching city exploration. If that sounds boring as hell to you, again, you will not like this game very much. I personally love that a lot. The long sections of me just being a sponge, gathering up every inch of information I could find was lovely. It was incredibly relaxing. Now, you are less interested in this, I'm sure, so let's talk combat. The combat in this game is interesting, but it really grew on me. Everything in this game is designed to make you feel like the leader, just so that when people don't listen to you, it genuinely bothers you. Because it bothers Peter too. The combat itself is a string of combining your own abilities with those of the Guardian as you command them in the heat of battle. I wasn't sure how to feel about that at first, and I didn't really enjoy it. But as the game progressed, with each ability you unlock, the more fun it gets. You end up chaining multiple abilities together perfectly to kill a boss without taking as much as a smidgen of damage. There were times when I couldn't help but have a stupid grin on my face as I played. I've been a Guardians of the Galaxy fan for a pretty long time, before the MCU movie. Seeing them be realized in a game was a dream come true, and to see it done so well, God, it's a wet dream come true. Overall, the gameplay definitely has faults. While it works for me, I'd have to give it a nice little 8 out of 10. It's not always streamlined, the audio locking can have issues, but it's a good time. Speaking of a good time, this game has a decent amount of bugs. They all tended to resolve themselves, nothing stopped me from continuing or progressing, but there were a couple nasty ones. I didn't get footage of this since it was pretty far into the game, but at one point I glitched into the floor for about 4 or 5 minutes. I managed to finagle my way out, but it was definitely a bit frustrating. There were a couple visual glitches here and there, mostly funny stuff. At one point it wouldn't let me upgrade anyone's abilities until I reloaded the save. I also did have one freeze where the game just dropped dead in the middle of a cutscene, so that was not a vibe. Otherwise, I didn't experience all that many FPS drops. It ran pretty solidly at like 60 to 30 FPS depending on the graphics settings, with a couple drops here and there when things got a little too spicy for my poor little laptop. This final pillar sadly is a 6 out of 10. There's some pretty bad bugs to have. Now, I assume you have one more question for me. What is my... I believe this game is really worth the time of anybody who's A, a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, or B, narrative-driven adventure games. It reminds me a lot of Uncharted in that way. The more I played this game, the more it reminded me of Uncharted, in the best ways. I love this game and these characters, and I have my fingers crossed for a sequel. I give this game an incredibly well-deserved 8.5 out of 10. It was good. Really good. Flawed, but really good. There are a lot of good things I passed over to give you a quicker review for this game because it's already reaching a little longer than I was hoping. Like the excellent difficulty system they have set up, as well as the outfits that I thoroughly enjoyed. I really do think this game is worth your time. It was excellent, and I loved it. Once again, you need to know, but you look amazing. You really do. Like, go look in the mirror. You're fucking gorgeous. Go look. Trust me. And have a good day. And definitely don't fucking die, or I will hurt you.